Jakarta in the world. I'm Doug Johnson. This is White Trash Talking. If you notice today, I'm wearing a special shirt. It's called a batik shirt. It's Indonesian traditional dress. And I thought, why not? I live in Indonesia. Let me show Indonesia's finest. So enjoy. Okay, so today I want to look at events taking place in Ukraine and what these events mean, what's motivating them, and what the likely outcome could be. And I'm speaking specifically about recent authorization given to Ukraine by the U.S. to use U.S.-made ATACMS missiles against Russia, to launch them into mainland Russia. And the issue with this, which the mainstream media in the West don't really cover adequately, is that it's not the issue of Ukraine attacking Russia. It's that the U.S. is involved in this attack. The weapons system, the ATACMS system, requires U.S. personnel, one, to get satellite data, to input this data in the tracking system of the launching mechanism, to do the sequence of codes and so on. And Ukraine could not do this without U.S. help. Russia had made it clear earlier that if the U.S. crossed this line, they would respond with an advanced weapon themselves. And that's precisely what's happened. So it was a couple of months ago that Biden had considered giving this authorization, but he was apparently dissuaded by the Pentagon from doing so. And we can only speculate because it brings us too close to nuclear war. This is an attack by the U.S. against Russia. And the question now is, why is Biden giving authorization right before he leaves office? And why is he doing it when Ukraine has clearly lost the war? They haven't surrendered yet, but they should. Their numbers are decimated. They've lost over 600,000 soldiers. They're no longer able to hold the line. They're retreating quickly, and Russia is taking more and more land daily and at an accelerated rate. And it's just a matter of a short period of time before Russia has complete control over the area. And the U.S. must know this. They do know this. They don't report it, but it's what the truth is. So what is Biden up to by granting this permission by Ukraine to launch this weapon against Russia? What could it accomplish? Another issue at stake here is that Russia has altered its nuclear posture, its nuclear threshold policy, and has responded with a weapon called the Oreshnik, which I don't know if you saw it on TV, but it looks like an outer space weapon. These orbs of light come down out of the sky. It has this kinetic energy that superheats right before impact, and it operates different than other conventional weapons, but it's equal to a nuclear weapon in terms of the damage it does. And the U.S. and NATO do not have anything that comes close. This is a hypersonic missile, meaning we can't shoot it out of the sky. There's no defensive system in the world that can stop it. And it's a game changer, and we'll talk more about that. So what's going on here? All right, let's listen to Scott Ritter talk about this new Oreshnik missile.
It's the first time a strategic system like this has ever been fired in combat. That's a psychological barrier. Nobody ever wanted to cross that barrier. This is the first time that a strategic system has been fired in combat. This is a huge event because now Russia has done it, and they're ready to do it again. I don't think the West is caught up to what exactly happened, because this is literally a game changer. And if we don't respect it, we're going to be hit harder and harder and harder.
Is there any question in your mind, Scott, but that this was fired in response to the authorizations by President Biden and Prime Minister Starmer for the use of ATACMS and Storm Shadows landing inside of Russia.
There's no doubt that this weapon was used because of what we did, what we authorized the Ukrainians to do.
And this brings us close to nuclear war. In fact, Russia has never been at a higher alert for nuclear war. And we're at a hair-trigger moment now where anything could happen. It could be a misunderstanding. It could be a misperception, an accident. So many things could now cause the end of life on Earth. And for what purpose? What are we doing here? Let's listen to Scott Ritter talk about the situation further.
Because the Russian nuclear doctrine that was just published by Vladimir Putin, one of the conditions for using nuclear weapons is if NATO countries fire conventional precision strike weapons and hit Russian strategic targets, command and control, logistics, communications, etc., that would trigger a nuclear response. And so when you have NATO saying we're going to do just that preemptively, which means we're not going to wait for the Russians to trigger it, we're going to hit them preemptively, that means that Russia now has to evaluate every action as a potential initiator for such a preemptive strike, which means the next time Ukraine fires an ATACMS missile or Storm Shadow missile, the Russians have to ask themselves, is this the beginning of this NATO preemptive strike? And therefore, if it is, we don't need to wait for all of it to come. We're going to go ahead and launch everything in response to take them out, including nuclear weapons. This is the suicidal aspect of it. It's just, it's.
Noam Chomsky once wrote that dying empires become more and more erratic and desperate. And that seems like what's happening here. That's one of the motivators here. I think the U.S., having been the sole superpower, and countries like Russia wouldn't dare stand up to the U.S., now they do dare, and they've in fact militarily eclipsed the U.S. with advanced weaponry. And it's a hard thing for the U.S. to swallow. It's like we have to relearn how to negotiate this world, and some people are not prepared to do that. So that's certainly one of the things going on here. But there's another, and that's money. And I talked about this earlier in my episode, War is a Racket, where General Butler, he wrote about this years ago, military general, how all wars are ultimately about money and profit. And it's no different in this case. So what I want to do is play a couple of clips by Senator Lindsey Graham, a prominent senator, pro-war, and what characterizes him is how stupid he is. If you watch him closely, he's just like, he's really dumb. Yet he'll do anything that they tell him to do, and he does have the knack of getting reelected, which is a certain form of intelligence. Okay, so let's listen to what he has. He's so stupid he gives it away, the true motivation for all of this. He should keep his mouth shut. For their sake, they wouldn't want the secret to get out, but he doesn't know any better. Let's listen to him.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, why, after Joe Biden had handcuffs on Ukraine the entire time, why would he allow ballistic missiles to be fired into Russia, which we are providing? And secondly, why is he giving them more money? And why is he doing all of this knowing that Donald Trump has a very different approach when he gets in office in 2 months?
Well, number one, if you'd given them the ability to fight early on, we'd be better off than we are today. But we're 1,000 days into this war. Ukraine is still standing. This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals. that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine. We can make money and have an economic relationship with Ukraine that'd be very beneficial to us with peace. So Donald Trump's going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals, a good deal for Ukraine and us, and he's going to bring peace.
Yeah, well, you know, what we're doing is what we've always done, which is wage war to get what we want, which is under the feet of other people. And we demonize, and we dehumanize, and we bully and kill in order to get that. And this is no exception. We're after these rare earth minerals and more, which I'll talk about. But we're doing it at the expense of Ukrainians. And the Ukrainian government doesn't care about the Ukrainians either. They're in cahoots with the U.S., enriching themselves. And no one cares about the Ukrainians. This is a mass murder, is what it is. Let's listen to Lindsey Graham talk to Zelensky directly.
I'm here with President Zelensky. I am such an admirer of what you and your country have done. You're trying to stop the Russians so we don't have to fight them. They don't want any American troops. They just need the weapons to free their country of a terrible invasion. They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. We can win this.
The terrible invasion he talks about, again, this is repeated in mainstream media. The U.S. had expanded NATO in violation of its own agreement right up to the border of Russia. And Russia is not going to tolerate a foreign army sitting right in its border with medium-range missiles that they can attack at any time. Nor would the U.S. allow such a thing in Mexico. So it wasn't just, yeah, they did invade, but it was in self-defense. Anyway, Lindsey Graham talks about these rare earth minerals, and he's no doubt representing corporations who are paying him, in addition to AIPAC, for him to advocate on their behalf. Make this war happen. Let's get control of this territory. You know, don't give up. And I think they hope that Russia will back down out of fear of nuclear war. Russia's not going to back down. All right. Okay, what I'd like to do now is take a look at an article that was published in Princeton University Press online, and it's Zelensky, BlackRock announce new investment initiatives to rebuild Ukraine. It's by Andrew Moran. There's a lot of money at stake in the reconstruction and the other things that are related. And it says here, following a meeting between President Zelensky and BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, the government confirmed that Wall Street Titan will coordinate the efforts of all potential investors and participants in the reconstruction of our country, end quote. As a result of the agreement, BlackRock will channel capital and into multiple sectors of the Eastern European countries' economy. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading the screen. I used to have really great eyes, but now not so much. So go down further. I mean, that sounds okay. You know, like, you want to rebuild. That's good for the people, right? Scroll down. This is Larry Fink. Okay, will Ukraine be a hotspot for investment? And the answer is yes, of course. While speaking at a Ukrainian infrastructure forum in London this month, Deputy Minister of Economy, he predicted that Ukraine would eventually, quote, become one of the best in the world in terms of opportunities for investors following the war. Okay. And then read further. 10 months after Russia started its invasion, an increasing number of international organizations and global corporations have announced new investments in Ukraine. One of them being Nestle, an American company, investing $43 million in a production facility in Western Ukraine. And the World Bank launched a $2 billion package, and so on. Okay. And it got me to thinking, you know, the way that the stock market works is stocks rise and fall based on expectations, and it was expected all along that the United States would easily win this war. Ukraine would beat. They thought Russia was weak, and so these companies were lining up, thinking that these investments were safe and that this coming revenue was secure. Turns out, no, it's all going to be lost. And that could affect the value of the stock for sure, especially a company like Nestle, which has announced their plan to invest $43 million. They would have seen a jump in their stock price, and now that's going to go back down. And companies that are expecting this influx of revenue will be sorely disappointed. And you know, could this be really what this is about? Could they be willing to go to nuclear war to ensure that their investments are safe and hope that Russia will back down and let the U.S. have its way in Ukraine? It's not going to happen. Okay. Let's listen to Scott Ritter talk about what needs to take place.
If you want to succeed with Russia right now, you don't violate the Logan Act, but if you come out and you make the following statement: I'm speaking to the Russian people and I'm speaking to the Russian leadership. On day one, I will sign an executive order that says that the policy of the United States regarding Russia is no longer premised on the notion of achieving a strategic defeat of Russia in Ukraine. The United States is not seeking the strategic defeat of Russia. The United States is seeking to find the mechanism for peaceful coexistence with Russia, and that's what will be guiding our relations for the next 4 years. He makes that statement. It is a game changer. The Russians will sit up and listen, and they'll be in a better position to make compromises that Trump may want them to make. And if you don't talk, Mr. President, I want to bring it back full circle. If you don't talk to the Russians, we're going to die, because it is the most dangerous situation we've ever faced. And the only way we got out of the Cuban Missile Crisis was by talking to the Russians based upon mutual respect.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, in case you weren't alive and you're young and haven't heard about it, happened back in the early 1960s. I was a little boy, and John F. Kennedy was the president. Khrushchev was the Russian president, and Russia put nuclear weapons in Cuba. And we found out about it, and Kennedy threatened Russia that we would go to nuclear war if he didn't remove them. And it looked like there might be a nuclear war. And the difference then and now is they were talking back then. They had lines open. And Kennedy talked directly to Khrushchev. Whereas now, the Russian ambassador in the U.S. has left. He's gone back home because no one talked to him for 7 years. He was just sitting there. So there's no dialogue taking place between the U.S. and Russia, and it's very dangerous, especially when you have this hair trigger situation where you don't know what's going on, what motivations are in effect. All right. I want to play a war demo. This is what would happen if Russia responded with a nuclear weapon against NATO, and how things would unfold. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who put this model together, but it's interesting.
This is a video I created some time ago that shows what happens. I shortened it a little bit, but it shows what happens when Russians respond with an attack on NATO forces, and it goes from there. These are counter-force strikes where the U.S. responds and hitting targets in Russia to take out its nuclear forces, but it's not going to arrive in time to do that, and a full-scale nuclear war results. And there'll be more than 4,000 nuclear detonations that incinerate all the major cities in the U.S., Europe. China would probably be involved too, but the massive nuclear firestorms from these would literally cover hundreds of thousands of square miles. Everything that's flammable in the fire zone would burn. There would be no survivors. The air temperatures get to above the boiling point of water. So if you live in a city, that would be what you would be looking at.
The air temperature gets above the boiling point of water. Something to keep in mind. I want to play just one more thing, and this is a dramatization of a nuclear war. I watched this in a movie called Threads about 20 years ago. It never left me. It had an impact on me then. Let me play it now. It's very short. If we have good relations with Russia and China, they would no doubt be willing to trade anything that we need. Each side has things the other side needs. But we have to be willing to live as equals in a multipolar world and stop taking by force and dehumanizing those who occupy the land of the resources that we want. That's a given. Okay, if you like this, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate all of you who watch and support me. Please leave a comment. That really makes my day to hear from people. And I'm publishing once a week, so I'll see you in 1 week. Thank you very much. Bye.